She woke up to a pounding headache and a fluttering heart. Her eyes felt heavy, and her mouth was dry. It was dark, and a single lamp glowed near a thick, heavy curtain. She did not know where she was, and panic rose in her chest. Her vision was blurry at first, but soon it settled on a figure lying beside her. In the dim light, she could see a man's broad shoulders and the neat waves of his dark hair. She could hear him breathing. Fear coursed through her veins. The scent of linen and lavender tickled her senses, but it did nothing to calm her racing thoughts. Her body felt sore, as if she had not slept properly. Slowly, she became aware of a strange pressure on her left ring finger. She blinked and lifted her hand. A shining ring, simple yet elegant, caught the glow from the small lamp. It could not be real. Her thoughts rushed forward in confusion. Why was there a ring on her finger? Who was this sleeping stranger next to her? She did not even know his name, yet there he was, close enough to feel the warmth of his body. She heard his breathing change, maybe in response to her movements. In her dazed state, she tried to piece everything together. Flashes of the previous night flickered through her mind. Loud music, bright lights, the swirl of a city skyline, and laughter that felt strangely comforting. Now, in the cold light of this unknown morning, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But there, on the table beside the bed, lay a certificate. The letters at the top read marriage license. Her heart almost stopped. No, that was impossible. She tried to swallow, but her mouth was too dry. She felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She wanted to shout, or maybe run out of the room. Her mind buzzed with a single question. How did she end up married to a stranger? The man let out a quiet sigh, and she froze. For a moment, she felt trapped, even though the room was large. Quietly, she slipped her legs to the side of the bed. She was still fully dressed, though her outfit was now wrinkled. A sleeveless navy dress that smelled faintly of spilled champagne. There was no obvious sign of wrongdoing. She could feel no bruise or mark that suggested harm. Yet something about this entire situation felt wrong. She leaned forward and squinted at the piece of paper on the table. She saw her name, Elena Hughes, typed neatly beside the man's name. The name read James Bradford. She had never even heard that name before. With trembling hands, she lifted the marriage certificate and found both signatures at the bottom. Hers was shaky, but it was there. The ink looked fresh, too real to be a trick. Panic flooded her mind, and she began to breathe fast, worried that the man might wake up and she would have to face him with no idea how to explain her confusion. But there was no going back. Her mind started to race through the limited memories of her night. She remembered going to a nightclub with a friend. She remembered stepping outside for fresh air and losing sight of her friend in the crowd. Then there was an image of meeting someone. The details were hazy. She recalled a conversation with a deep voice. She remembered feeling a strange combination of safety and excitement. Then there was a blinding set of city lights, a swirl of dancing, and a clink of glasses. After that, everything was a blur. Did they joke about something wild and free? Did they talk about believing in fate or throwing caution to the wind? For all she knew, she might have been the one insisting on a spontaneous wedding. It was all so vague. Slowly, she turned her head to look at the man who still seemed to be asleep. He was tall and looked fit beneath the crisp, expensive shirt he still wore. He had not even changed into pajamas. She noticed a black blazer thrown carelessly on the floor. By the faint light, she could see a label stitched inside the jacket, something French or Italian that she did not recognize. It looked like something only the wealthy could afford. She gingerly placed her feet on the soft carpet and stood up. She tried to open the door at the far side of the room, but it was locked. Her hands shook as she tried the handle a second time with no luck. Then she noticed another door that led into a hallway. She walked carefully to it, trying not to wake the man. When she turned the knob, it creaked slightly, and a faint rush of cool air hit her face. She stepped out and paused, glancing back. She wanted to run away, but something stopped her. Did she really want to flee with no answers? A mix of curiosity, fear, and a strange sense of responsibility pulled her back into the room. At that moment, the man stirred. She felt her breath catch in her throat. He opened his eyes, revealing a pair of gray-blue irises that reflected surprise and confusion. For a few tense seconds, they stared at each other. Elena clutched the doorknob, as though it were her last chance to feel something solid in this surreal moment. He blinked, looked around, and then focused on her. It was clear he was trying to piece together the puzzle as well. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "You're awake." He rubbed his forehead. This is not what I was expecting." She felt a sudden rush of emotion. She wanted answers. She also felt an irrational urge to cry. But she willed herself to stay calm, or at least try. "What's going on?" she asked. Her voice cracked at the end. Do you remember what happened last night?" He sat up, wincing at a probable headache of his own. He glanced at the ring on his finger, as if seeing it for the first time. Then he looked at the marriage certificate on the side table. "I remember bits and pieces," he said quietly. There was a bar on the top floor of some hotel. We joked about getting married because of some story, someone we knew who ran off to Vegas or something like that." He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. "But I can't recall how we actually ended up here." Elena felt a small wave of relief that he seemed just as clueless. Yet her heart hammered with dread. "But this paper," she said, lifting the document gently, "it's real. It has our names, our signatures. I remember signing something, but everything else is a blur." He stood up, moving carefully. "We must have gone to a 24-hour chapel or some quick marriage bureau. But I'm not from around here, and if we did that, it means—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I think it's legal, Elena." She lowered her head. The seriousness of the moment hit her hard. She was legally married to a stranger. He spoke again. "I'm James Bradford." He extended a hand like a polite introduction, and the absurdity of it almost made Elena laugh. Here they were, ring on finger, wedding certificate in hand, introducing themselves like polite strangers at a conference. She reached out and shook his hand, noticing how warm and steady it felt. "Do you remember my name?" she asked, her voice still trembling. He managed a small, uncertain smile. "Yes, it's Elena Hughes." There was a pause, and he frowned. "At least, that's what was on the license. Or maybe it's Elena Bradford now." A cold chill ran down her spine at the sound of it. She felt no joy at the idea of taking his last name. She hardly knew him. She started, but words failed her. The ring on her finger weighed her down like a chain. Finally, she spoke again. "We need to find out what happened. Maybe we can go talk to the place we visited. See if there's a record. Maybe we can fix this. We can have it annulled, right?" The thought brought a sting of guilt, though she did not know why. He nodded. "Yes, that seems like the right thing to do. But first, we should, get out of here. This isn't my suite." He looked around. "At least, I don't think it is. I was staying at my apartment across town." Elena raised her brows. "Your apartment?" She realized that a typical person in this city might live in a normal space, not some giant penthouse suite. Was he renting a hotel room? Or did he own half the hotel? She had no idea. "Why are we here then?" He shrugged. "Maybe we wanted somewhere private. Or maybe this came with the wedding package. I'm honestly not sure." His eyes met hers. "I don't know how to handle this, but I promise I won't do anything to hurt you." She let go of her tight grip on the door. In a soft voice she replied, "I want to trust you, but this is all too strange. Let's just find a way to figure out what happened." They left the room together, venturing into a hallway lined with muted lights. It seemed to be part of an exclusive floor that only the wealthiest guests might book. The carpet felt plush under their feet, and the wallpaper was decorated with tasteful artwork. Elena felt out of place. It all seemed so expensive. She tried to recall if she had ever been to a hotel this luxurious. Maybe for some work event, she had visited a nice conference room once, but never a suite like this. She glanced at James from the corner of her eye, wondering about him. He had said he was not from around here, so what did he do for a living? The ring on his finger shimmered in the low light, and she caught a glimpse of a fancy watch on his wrist. If it was a real brand, then it would be worth more than everything she owned. When they reached the elevator, James pressed the button. They rode down in silence, except for the faint whir of the elevator. Elena watched the numbers descend. 42, 41, 40. She tried to remember how far up they had been. The elevator opened to a grand lobby with marble floors and a grand chandelier. It was early morning, and only a handful of people moved around, some carrying luggage, others yawning at the coffee stand. James led the way to the front desk, where a polished man with a kind smile greeted them. "Good morning, sir." Checking out, the clerk asked politely. James hesitated. "Yes, from the suite on the 42nd floor. Could you remind me how I booked it?" Well, last night was a bit blurry." The clerk nodded. "Certainly, Mr. Bradford. You placed a phone reservation around midnight. You mentioned celebrating a special occasion." His eyes darted to Elena. She felt her cheeks grow warm. She cursed under her breath. The clerk turned back to James, still smiling politely. "We hope you enjoyed your stay. Is there anything we can assist you with regarding payment or car service?" James nodded once, maintaining a steady calm. "I'll need a car to my office, please. And could you also check if we left anything behind in the suite?" Elena just stood quietly, unsure how to participate in this strange conversation. The clerk tapped at his computer. "Everything seems settled on your personal account, Mr. Bradford. We haven't received any requests from housekeeping yet, but we'll have them contact you if they find anything." He paused, then handed James a small envelope. "You left these keys at the desk last night. I believe they are for your apartment." James took the envelope, thanked the clerk, and turned to Elena. "Shall we?" She gave a quick nod, and they walked outside. The morning sunlight stung her eyes after the dim lobby. A sleek black car pulled up, and a driver stepped out, tipping his hat. "Mr. Bradford," he said in a formal tone. "The office as requested?" James opened the back door for Elena. She slipped into the plush interior, feeling awkward. He slid in next to her. As the driver pulled away, Elena stared out the window at the busy streets. The city was waking up, people heading to work, buses rumbling, shops opening. She felt a surreal distance from it all. She was a married woman now, married to a man she hardly knew, on her way to his office. At that thought, she turned to him. "Where exactly are we going?" He exhaled, rubbing his temples. "I need a quiet place to figure this out. My office has a private conference room. We can sit down, call the chapel or bureau, and see what happened. We can talk freely there." She thought about it. She had nowhere else to go. She was worried about her apartment, about her friend who might be wondering why she never came home. She fumbled for her phone in her purse. Thankfully, it was there, though the battery was almost dead. With trembling hands, she turned it on and found several missed calls from her friend, Lila, plus a string of texts asking if she was safe. She quickly typed out a message. "I'm fine. Got caught up with something. We'll explain later." "Don't worry." That was all she could manage. She was not ready to admit what had happened. She could not even believe it herself. James noticed her tapping on her phone. "Do you need to contact anyone else? Family? Your job?" Elena realized it was Monday morning. She would have to call her boss, but she had some personal leave saved up. She prayed it would be enough time to sort out this chaos. "I'll call in sick," she said quietly. "I work for an insurance company. They won't ask too many questions if I say I'm under the weather." She forced a shaky smile. "It's not exactly a lie, considering the headache." He nodded, then lowered his gaze, as if embarrassed. "Look, I'm sorry this happened. I don't want you to think I forced you into anything. You seemed excited about it last night, and I guess I was too. I must have had more than my usual limit to drink." She wanted to be angry, but the truth was, she could not remember who suggested what. Maybe she was equally responsible. "I'm not blaming you," she said. "I just want to fix this as soon as possible. We're strangers. This can't stand." He nodded, not looking at her. Agreed. But there was something in his voice, something that sounded almost disappointed, though she could not be sure why. They arrived at a tall glass building in the heart of the city's financial district. The driver parked out front, and James led Elena through the front doors. Elegant lights, modern sculptures, and a busy reception area told Elena this was a place of high importance. A young woman at the front desk greeted James warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Bradford," she said. "We were not expecting you this early." James waved a hand in a friendly manner. "Had a change of plans, Celia. I'll be in the private conference room. No visitors, please." She nodded quickly, eyeing Elena curiously, but saying nothing. Elena felt a flash of discomfort, like everyone was silently judging her presence. Soon, they rode an elevator to a top floor with sprawling views of the city. The hallway was lined with glass panels etched with modern designs. James guided her into a spacious conference room with a long table and plush leather chairs. He closed the door behind them, and they finally had some privacy. Elena sat down, resting her hands on the polished tabletop. James shrugged off his jacket and placed it over a chair. Then he took out his phone. "Let's see if we can find the name of the place we went. We might have texted or searched for something on our phones last night." He scrolled through his phone, frowning at first, then brightening. "I have a message here. Happy wedding from the Moonlight Chapel. That must be the place." He glanced at Elena. "We can start by calling them." She nodded, pushing away the lingering sense of disbelief. He put the call on speaker so she could listen too. A woman answered in a cheery voice. "Moonlight Chapel, where dreams become reality. How may I help you?" James cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm James Bradford. My wife and I," he paused awkwardly, and Elena's cheeks flamed at the word wife. "We were there last night. It was very late, and we believe we got married. We just wanted to confirm the details." The woman laughed gently, clearly used to such calls. "Oh yes, Mr. Bradford. You and your bride were such a fun couple. One of our busiest nights, so please forgive me if I need to check. We had several ceremonies after midnight." Elena exchanged a nervous look with James. The woman put them on hold for a moment, then came back. "Yes, here we are. James Bradford and Elena Hughes. You arrived around 2 in the morning. We processed the paperwork, you paid the fee, and you had a quick ceremony. We took a few photos. Don't worry, we'll email them to you." Elena felt her chest tighten. It was real. It happened. She tried to breathe slowly. James spoke again. "Right. Thank you. We were a bit out of it. We appreciate you confirming." "Not a problem," the woman replied. "If you need any assistance with legal copies, or if you'd like a vow renewal in the future, we'd be happy to help. Congratulations again. Have a wonderful day." James ended the call and set the phone down. They sat there in silence for a long moment. "That's that then," he said softly. "It's legal." Elena swallowed hard. "Yes, it is." He turned to his laptop, which was on the table. He began typing, perhaps looking up marriage annulment procedures. She watched his face grow tense as he skimmed the information. "It looks like we can file for an annulment if certain conditions are met. One of them is that we were too intoxicated to understand our actions." He tapped a few keys. "We can do that. It'll take some time, though." She exhaled. "Okay, then we should do that as soon as possible." He scrolled further, then frowned. "Yes, that's the best approach. But we might need to appear in court or at least file documents. Let me make a few calls." He dialed a number, and within minutes he was speaking to a legal assistant who said she would reach out to a family law attorney. Elena felt her pulse calming a bit. There was a solution, at least. She was not doomed to remain in a marriage she knew nothing about. While they waited, James looked at her gently. "Do you want something to drink? Coffee, tea?" She realized she was parched, her throat dry. "Water would be great." He pressed a button on the intercom and asked an assistant to bring them bottled water. A few minutes later, a polite knock sounded at the door. A young man in a neat suit wheeled in a small cart with water, coffee, and a few pastries. He nodded, left them alone, and shut the door behind him. The entire moment felt surreal to Elena. She was inside a high-rise conference room, married to a billionaire stranger, about to share a simple breakfast while discussing how to undo a wedding. She took a sip of water, then another. She felt better. James poured a cup of coffee for himself, adding just a bit of sugar. She noticed the brand of the coffee. It was expensive. Everything about him suggested a life of privilege. But he did not flaunt it, at least not at that moment. She wondered if she would have liked him under normal circumstances. He was calm, polite, and seemed genuine enough. If they had met at a dinner party, maybe she would have found him charming. Now, however, their entire relationship was overshadowed by the bizarre mistake they had made. She wanted to be angry, but the truth was she could not remember who suggested what. Maybe she was equally responsible. "I'm not blaming you," she said. "I just want to fix this as soon as possible. We're strangers. This can't stand." He nodded, not looking at her. Agreed. But there was something in his voice, something that sounded almost disappointed, though she could not be sure why. They arrived at a tall glass building in the heart of the city's financial district. The driver parked out front, and James led Elena through the front doors. Elegant lights, modern sculptures, and a busy reception area told Elena this was a place of high importance. A young woman at the front desk greeted James warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Bradford," she said. "We were not expecting you this early." James waved a hand in a friendly manner. "Had a change of plans, Celia. I'll be in the private conference room. No visitors, please." She nodded quickly, eyeing Elena curiously, but saying nothing. Elena felt a flash of discomfort, like everyone was silently judging her presence. Soon, they rode an elevator to a top floor with sprawling views of the city. The hallway was lined with glass panels etched with modern designs. James guided her into a spacious conference room with a long table and plush leather chairs. He closed the door behind them, and they finally had some privacy. Elena sat down, resting her hands on the polished tabletop. James shrugged off his jacket and placed it over a chair. Then he took out his phone. "Let's see if we can find the name of the place we went. We might have texted or searched for something on our phones last night." He scrolled through his phone, frowning at first, then brightening. "I have a message here. Happy wedding from the Moonlight Chapel. That must be the place." He glanced at Elena. "We can start by calling them." She nodded, pushing away the lingering sense of disbelief. He put the call on speaker so she could listen too. A woman answered in a cheery voice. "Moonlight Chapel, where dreams become reality. How may I help you?" James cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm James Bradford. My wife and I," he paused awkwardly, and Elena's cheeks flamed at the word wife. "We were there last night. It was very late, and we believe we got married. We just wanted to confirm the details." The woman laughed gently, clearly used to such calls. "Oh yes, Mr. Bradford. You and your bride were such a fun couple. One of our busiest nights, so please forgive me if I need a check. We had several ceremonies after midnight." Elena exchanged a nervous look with James. The woman put them on hold for a moment, then came back. "Yes, here we are. James Bradford and Elena Hughes. You arrived around 2 in the morning. We processed the paperwork, you paid the fee, and you had a quick ceremony. We took a few photos. Don't worry, we'll email them to you." Elena felt her chest tighten. It was real. It happened. She tried to breathe slowly. James spoke again. "Right. Thank you. We were a bit out of it. We appreciate you confirming." "Not a problem," the woman replied. "If you need any assistance with legal copies, or if you'd like a vow renewal in the future, we'd be happy to help. Congratulations again. Have a wonderful day." James ended the call and set the phone down. They sat there in silence for a long moment. "That's that then," he said softly. "It's legal." Elena swallowed hard. "Yes, it is." He turned to his laptop, which was on the table. He began typing, perhaps looking up marriage annulment procedures. She watched his face grow tense as he skimmed the information. "It looks like we can file for an annulment if certain conditions are met. One of them is that we were too intoxicated to understand our actions." He tapped a few keys. "We can do that. It'll take some time, though." She exhaled. "Okay, then we should do that as soon as possible." He scrolled further, then frowned. "Yes, that's the best approach. But we might need to appear in court, or at least file documents. Let me make a few calls." He dialed a number, and within minutes, he was speaking to a legal assistant who said she would reach out to a family law attorney. Elena felt her pulse calming a bit. There was a solution, at least. She was not doomed to remain in a marriage she knew nothing about. While they waited, James looked at her gently. "Do you want something to drink?" "Coffee, tea." She realized she was parched, her throat dry. Water would be great. He pressed a button on the intercom and asked an assistant to bring them bottled water. A few minutes later, a polite knock sounded at the door. A young man in a neat suit wheeled in a small cart with water, coffee, and a few pastries. He nodded, left them alone, and shut the door behind him. The entire moment felt surreal to Elena. She was inside a high-rise conference room, married to a billionaire stranger, about to share a simple breakfast, while discussing how to undo a wedding. She took a sip of water, then another. She felt better. James poured a cup of coffee for himself, adding just a bit of sugar. She noticed the brand of the coffee. It was expensive. Everything about him suggested a life of privilege. But he did not flaunt it, at least not at that moment. She wondered if she would have liked him under normal circumstances. He was calm, polite, and seemed genuine enough. If they had met at a dinner party, maybe she would have found him charming. Now, however, their entire relationship was overshadowed by the bizarre mistake they had made. Elena managed a small smile. "Tell me about it." She checked the time. She needed a quick shower, some fresh clothes, and maybe a nap if she could calm her nerves. While she showered, images of James returned to her mind. His voice, his gray-blue eyes, his gentle way of speaking. She remembered how the ring felt on her finger. She found herself wondering what he was doing. "Stop it," she told herself, scrubbing shampoo into her hair. "You're not actually married, not in any real sense." She dried herself off, dressed in a simple blouse and a knee-length skirt, and decided to rest for half an hour. Curling up on her bed, she closed her eyes. But she could not fall asleep. Her mind refused to quiet down. Each time she drifted, she saw that photo from a chapel, the one with her looking at James like he was the only man in the world. Eventually, she gave up on the nap. She emerged from her room, finding Lila waiting in the kitchen, worried. They talked about ordinary things for a while, work drama, grocery lists, anything to avoid the bizarre elephant in the room. But the minutes ticked by, and soon, Elena had to leave for the attorney's office. Lila squeezed her hand. "Good luck, babe." Elena forced a smile. "Thanks. I'll text you." Outside, James had sent the same driver, who greeted her by name this time. She slipped into the car, heart pounding. On the drive, she tried to steady herself. In a short while, she would be signing the first steps to end this fake marriage. Then, presumably, James and she would never see each other again. That was the normal and logical thing to do. They arrived at a stately building with tall columns. The driver instructed her to head up to the 8th floor. She thanked him and rode the elevator, stepping out into a quiet hallway lined with law offices. She found the correct door. Inside, James was already seated on a plush leather chair in the waiting area. He rose when he saw her. "Hi," he said softly. He looked a bit tired, but still maintained a certain dignity that came from his upbringing. "Hi," she replied, her voice tense. A receptionist smiled at them both. "Mr. Bradford, Ms. Hughes, the attorney will see you now." They entered an office decorated with rows of books, large windows, and a sleek desk. A woman in a crisp suit stood to greet them. "Hello, I'm Karen Delgado," she said, offering a handshake. Her tone was professional and reassuring. "Please have a seat." Elena and James sat side by side, feeling like they were in a school principal's office. Karen opened a file and began reviewing the details they had sent over. "So, you two were married last night under circumstances involving significant intoxication, and you wished to file for an annulment on the grounds that you were not fully aware of your actions. Is that correct?" They both nodded. "All right," Karen continued, making a note. "We can proceed with that argument. It may require statements from witnesses or receipts from the bar. If the court sees that you were indeed incapacitated, it should be granted. It might take a little time, but we can file the initial paperwork today." Elena felt a surge of relief. James, too, seemed calmer. He leaned forward. "That's all we have to do." Karen nodded. "Yes. I'll prepare the papers. You'll both sign them today." We'll submit them to the county clerk. After that, we wait. If there are no complications, it should be finalized without much trouble. In the meantime, you'll still be legally married until it's done, but that's just on paper. Once the annulment is complete, it will be as if this marriage never happened. Elena stared at her hands, fiddling with the ring. She wondered if she should take it off now. It felt strange to keep wearing it, but pulling it off in front of James felt oddly harsh, like tearing a Band-Aid off too fast. They spent another hour going through forms, answering questions about the events of the night. Karen asked them to describe how much they drank, who they were with, and how they met. The routine questions felt clinical, but Elena was thankful it was all so straightforward. When Karen asked if they had consummated the marriage, Elena flushed deeply and glanced at James. She quickly answered that they had not, and James confirmed it. That was that. Karen made a few final notes. "All right, we're done for now," she announced, handing them pens. "Sign here and here." They complied. The attorney congratulated them on taking prompt action. "Sometimes people wait weeks or months before handling this," she said. "You two are being responsible." James nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, well, we just want to do the right thing." Karen escorted them to the door and assured them she would file the papers immediately. With that, it was all out of their hands for the time being. Elena and James walked down the hallway together. She felt a strange sense of emptiness, a kind of hollow relief. "Well," he said when they reached the elevator, "I guess that's it for now." She nodded. "Yes, I guess so." They stepped into the elevator, and he pressed the button for the lobby. Neither spoke at first. The doors slid shut. Elena tried to focus on the floor indicator lights overhead, but she felt James's presence next to her. She remembered how she had felt in those pictures, so happy, so alive. She swallowed back the emotions. This was just an accident. When they reached the lobby, James turned to her. "I'll have the driver take you home, unless there's somewhere else you need to go." She gave him a tense smile. "Thank you. Home is fine." They walked outside. The sun was higher now, and the city's midday rush was in full swing. The driver pulled the car up. James opened the door for her. She hesitated, glancing at him. "I suppose we'll be in touch if the lawyer needs anything else." "Yes," he replied, scratching the back of his neck. "Or if you need anything." She managed a quiet "thank you," then slid into the back seat. As the car pulled away, she watched him in the side mirror until he disappeared into the crowd. Back at her apartment, Elena felt exhausted. Lila was at work, so Elena was alone. She fixed a light lunch but barely had an appetite. She tried to distract herself with a TV show, but her mind kept drifting. Her phone buzzed a few times with messages from coworkers and from Lila checking in. She answered vaguely, "I'm okay, just dealing with something." She managed to catch a fitful nap in the late afternoon. When she woke, she realized the ring was still on her finger. She sat on the edge of her bed and carefully slid it off. It left a slight imprint on her skin. She placed it on her nightstand, staring at it. The metal gleamed in the fading daylight. She felt a wave of sadness she could not explain. She busied herself with small chores, cleaning up the living room, tidying her workspace. But her thoughts kept returning to James, to the wedding photos, to the sensation that she was missing something important. Her memory of that night was still hazy, but bits of it floated up if she focused. She recalled dancing close to him, hearing him say something about fate. She remembered feeling safe, protected, and oddly thrilled, as if she had discovered something magical that only he could give. It was maddening that she could not piece it all together clearly. The next few days passed in a swirl of awkward phone calls with the attorney and restlessness at home. Elena took time off work, claiming a personal emergency. Lila questioned her daily, gently prying to see if Elena's feelings were changing. Elena always insisted she was certain about the annulment, but deep down, she felt uncertain. How could she not? The glimpses of happiness from that strange night lingered in her mind. By the end of the week, the attorney confirmed that the necessary documents had been filed. It was simply a matter of waiting. Elena tried to dive back into her routine. She returned to her office, tackled insurance claims, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But her ring finger often felt empty, a fact that unnerved her. Stop thinking about that, she scolded herself. Then, one day, after almost 2 weeks of silence from James, she received a text message from him. James, hi Elena. Hope you're well. Could I talk to you about something important? She stared at the message, her heart thumping. She had almost convinced herself that she would not hear from him until the annulment was complete. Part of her wanted to ignore him, but curiosity and an unexpected warmth made her type back. Elena, sure, we can talk. What is it? He responded within seconds. James, could we meet in person? I understand if you don't want to, but it's related to the annulment paperwork and a few other things. She chewed on her lower lip. Meeting him face to face could stir all kinds of feelings she was trying to bury. But if it was important for the legal process, she needed to cooperate. Elena, all right. Where? They decided on a cafe near her office. She spent the rest of the day half working, half dreading the meeting. Finally, the clock struck 5, and she found herself slipping out of the office, walking 2 blocks to a cozy, upscale cafe. She spotted him immediately. He was seated at a corner table, wearing a dark suit. He stood when he saw her, and she noticed a mix of relief and tension in his posture. She approached, remembering how tall he was. They sat down, and a waiter approached. She ordered a latte. He ordered a tea. For a moment, neither spoke. Then James cleared his throat. Thanks for coming, he said. I'm sorry to bother you. I received some new information. Her pulse quickened. What kind of information? He took a breath, brushing a hand through his neatly styled hair. My family found out about the marriage. It wasn't on purpose, but my father saw some note or photo. I'm not sure exactly how. Maybe one of the photos ended up on social media, or the chapel posted something. He shook his head. He's not happy, to say the least. Elena frowned. I'm sorry. I didn't post anything. My friend is the only one who knows, and she wouldn't share those photos. He gave her a reassuring glance. I'm not blaming you. My father can be thorough. He might have ways of finding out. Anyway, there's a bigger problem. The waiter arrived with their drinks, and they both paused, offering small smiles and thanks. When the waiter was gone, James continued, speaking quietly. I'm set to inherit a major share of our family's business, but there are conditions in the will. One of them states that I need to be married or at least engaged in a stable relationship when certain transitions occur. His expression darkened. My father found out about our marriage, and now he wants me to prove it's not a sham or else risk losing everything. Elena's eyes widened. What does that mean for you? James shook his head. It's complicated. If I annul this marriage, my father might block me from certain positions. He'll say I acted irresponsibly. He believes a stable marriage is a sign of maturity, some old-fashioned notion of responsibility. If I stay married at least for a while, it might satisfy the will's conditions until I can structure an alternative arrangement. Elena let out a stunned breath. She sipped her latte to calm her nerves. Are you saying you don't want the annulment? He looked pained. No, I still agree it's the logical step. We're strangers, after all. But if you're willing, could we maybe postpone it? Or pretend to stay married a bit longer, just until I sort out my position in the company. Elena's hands trembled. This was exactly the kind of drama she did not want in her life. She had a stable job, a simple apartment, and minimal stress. James, that's a lot to ask, she said honestly. He nodded, looking guilty. I know it's insane, but I'd make it worth your while. I'd compensate you for any inconvenience, of course. You can keep your normal life, but maybe appear with me at a few company events. Let my father see that we're, well, not a total disaster. He paused, seeing her hesitation. Listen, I understand if you say no. I just had to ask. My father is pushing me, and I need a solution. Elena stared at her latte, swirling the foam absent-mindedly. Could she really agree to such a thing? A fake marriage with a man she barely knew, just to help him secure his inheritance? It was a ridiculous plan. And yet, a tiny voice inside her whispered that maybe this was fate giving them a second chance. She tried to quiet that thought. She looked up at him. You say make it worth my while. What does that mean exactly? He sighed. I'm not trying to buy you, Elena, but I'd be willing to help you financially with anything you need. Maybe pay off your debts if you have any, or I don't know. I just don't want you to think I'm using you without giving anything in return. She felt her chest tighten with conflicting emotions. She hated the idea of selling herself, but she also recognized the sincerity in his eyes. I don't want your money, she said softly, but I also can't just throw my life upside down. He nodded quickly. I get it. It would mean some time commitment for a few months, maybe 6 at most. After that, we could either finalize the annulment or file for a quiet divorce. By then, I'd have a plan in place for my father's concerns. She took a deep breath. I need time to think about this. James offered a small smile. Of course. Take all the time you need. The court process for the annulment is not instant. We can slow it down. We just won't push it forward as fast. You decide what you want. I won't pressure you. They finished their drinks in a heavy silence. When they parted ways, he gave her a polite goodbye, and she went home feeling more confused than ever. Days turned into a week. Elena told Lila about the bizarre proposal, and her friend was astonished. Girl, are you seriously thinking about it? Lila asked, perched on the edge of the couch. Elena shrugged helplessly. I don't know. It's not like I want to be a pretend wife. But there's something about James that feels... I can't explain. Also, it's not that he's a bad person. He's stuck in a weird position. And we're already married, in a sense. Lila raised a brow. You were ready to sign those papers and never look back. Elena sighed. Yes, I was. But now that he's asking for more time, I feel guilty. I feel like maybe we owe it to ourselves to see if there was a reason we ended up together that night. Maybe we had a real connection, even if it was drowned in alcohol. Lila exhaled, placing a comforting hand on Elena's arm. Be careful. This could lead to heartbreak. He's asking for a fake marriage, not a real one. Elena nodded. I know. But something tells me there's more to it than just his father's demands. I see it in his eyes when he talks about this. He's lonely, Lila. Her friend gave her a tight hug. I trust your instincts, but please don't get hurt. After many sleepless nights, Elena decided to meet James again. They set a time at the same cafe. She arrived early, nerves on edge. When he walked in, her heart fluttered despite herself. She had to remind herself that this was not a fairy tale. It was a messy situation. He sat, a hopeful look in his gaze. Have you decided? She steadied her breath. I'm willing to try. But we need rules. We need to be honest with each other, no lies. If you want me to stay in this marriage for a while, you have to respect my independence and my boundaries. We can't pretend to be in love in private if we're just acting for your father's sake. If this is purely for show, then so be it. But if we start to develop real feelings, we have to talk about it. We can't play games. He nodded fervently, relief washing over his face. Yes, absolutely. You have my word. I don't want to force anything. And if at any point you decide you can't do it, we'll go through with the annulment or divorce right away. I promise. All right, she said. Then we'll do this. I'll be your wife in public for a few months. We'll see how it goes. He broke into a cautious smile. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. She sipped her water, trying to calm the whirlwind of doubts within her. So what's next? He hesitated, then said, the next step is letting my father see that we're a real couple. He wants to meet you. He's hosting a small event at our family estate this weekend. It's a formal dinner with some business partners. I'd need you to be there by my side. You can stay at my place, or I can pick you up. Whatever you prefer. Her stomach did a nervous flip. Meeting the father who demanded a stable marriage? The father who could ruin James's career? All right, she said, voice shaky. I'll come. But don't expect me to be some perfect socialite. I don't know high society's ways. He reached out, almost taking her hand, then pulled back, as if unsure if that was allowed. I'll help you. We'll figure this out together. Elena nodded. Her mind spun with 1,000 what-ifs, but she tried to remain calm. She had made her choice. That Saturday morning, a black limousine arrived at her apartment building. She had not expected a limo, but apparently James wanted to make a certain impression. Lila helped Elena with her dress, an elegant but simple black gown that James had arranged. Elena felt awkward but grateful. The material was smooth, hugging her curves without being too revealing. She pulled her hair back in a loose updo, letting a few strands frame her face. Her makeup was light, highlighting her features without overwhelming them. "Wow," Lila breathed. "You look stunning, babe." Elena managed a nervous smile, her heart pounding. "Thanks. I hope I can handle this. Call me if you need anything," Lila said firmly. Elena stepped outside and got into the waiting limousine. The driver greeted her politely and informed her that Mr. Bradford was waiting at the estate. The car drove out of the city, along a scenic route that led to a gated property. Tall trees lined the driveway, which curved toward a sprawling mansion. The estate looked like something out of a movie: ornate fountains, manicured lawns, and shining marble steps leading to a grand entrance. A butler opened the car door for her, and she stepped out onto the polished driveway. She felt her knees quake at the grandeur. Then James appeared, descending the marble steps, a welcoming smile on his face. He wore a tailored suit, and his hair was neatly styled. He approached her, offering his arm. "You look incredible," he whispered, guiding her toward the entrance. She tried to calm her nerves, grateful for the reassuring warmth of his arm. Inside, the foyer was even more impressive, with vaulted ceilings, gold-trimmed railings, and a chandelier that sparkled like starlight. Elegant guests milled about, sipping champagne from delicate flutes. Waiters glided through the crowd, offering trays of canapes. Elena felt like she had stepped onto another planet. She heard murmured conversations, discussions of business deals, art collections, exotic vacations. People glanced at her curiously. Some whispered behind their hands, while others greeted James with respect, calling him Mr. Bradford, or sometimes James. At the far end of the room, Elena saw a tall, stern-looking man with salt and pepper hair. His posture was rigid, and he wore an expensive three-piece suit. There was a certain power in his stance. James led Elena over. "Father," James said, inclining his head, "I'd like you to meet my wife, Elena." The older man's gaze swept over Elena, taking in every detail. She felt exposed, but she forced herself to smile politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Bradford," she said, extending her hand. He took it briefly, his grip firm. "Elena," he acknowledged, his voice low. "I've heard much about you in a short time." She had no idea what to say to that, so she simply smiled again. James's father looked at his son. "I trust you both have discussed the gravity of this relationship. I hope you're taking it seriously." James nodded. "We are. We plan to remain together and build a future." Elena tried to keep her face neutral, though her stomach fluttered at the lie. "Are we building a future or faking one?" She pushed the thought aside. The older man offered a tight-lipped smile. "Good. Then let's see you mingle with our guests. We'll talk more later." With that, he drifted off to speak with someone else. James exhaled, guiding Elena away. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "He can be very intimidating." She bit her lip. "I can handle it. Don't worry." He flashed her a grateful look, then led her to a group of people, introducing her as his wife. They chatted about mundane topics, from the weather to new developments in the city. Elena tried her best to act composed, though inside she felt like a fish out of water. She found comfort in James's supportive glances. Occasionally, his hand pressed lightly against her back, offering silent reassurance. As the evening went on, the crowd moved to a grand dining room. Long tables were set with fine china and crystal glasses. The meal was lavish, a parade of gourmet dishes. Elena managed to make small talk with the person beside her, a friendly woman who talked about her charitable foundation. James occasionally caught Elena's eye, winking reassuringly. She realized he was making an effort to help her feel less alone in this unfamiliar world. After dinner, guests filtered back into the hall for more conversation or dancing. A small orchestra played soft music. James led Elena onto the dance floor. She felt self-conscious, but he guided her gently, and soon they were swaying in time with the music. She found herself looking up at him, mesmerized by the soft light playing across his face. He leaned down to whisper, "You're doing great." She gave a small laugh. "I'm faking it, but thank you." His eyes shimmered with something like admiration. "I really appreciate you coming tonight. My father seems more at ease, but we'll see how it goes. He's going to want a private conversation with us soon." Elena felt her nerves spike. Any tips on what to say? James frowned. He might ask personal questions. "If you're uncomfortable, let me answer. But he'll want to see how you respond. Just be honest." She nodded. The dance ended, and they were guided into a smaller library where James's father waited. A couple of business associates were with him, older men who exuded power. They turned as James and Elena entered. "James," his father said. "Elena, please join us." They sat on a plush sofa, and Mr. Bradford fixed them with a serious gaze. "It seems you two had a sudden, unexpected wedding. That's quite unusual for our family. We prefer to plan these things carefully. But it's done. Now, I want to ensure you're both committed to this union." James sat up straighter. "We are." His father's eyes flicked to Elena. "Have you considered what it means to be part of the Bradford family, Elena? Our name carries responsibility, expectations. James is positioned to take on a major role, and his wife must stand by him through all challenges." Elena swallowed. "I understand that. I may not come from a powerful family, but I'm ready to support James. We want to make this work." The words felt heavy, but she tried to inject sincerity, because part of her did feel protective of James in a strange way. One of the associates, a sharp-eyed man, asked, "What are your plans, Elena? Will you continue working your regular job, or will you assist James in his ventures?" She hesitated. "I plan to keep working for now. I haven't made a decision about changing careers." Mr. Bradford's gaze remained intense. "James, how do you see your wife fitting into your life in the future? Will she be prepared to travel with you, attend events, host gatherings?" James cleared his throat. "Yes, if that's what she wants. I'm not going to force her to give up her own ambitions. We'll find a balance." His father studied them both in silence for a few moments. Then he gave a curt nod. "All right, let's leave it at that for now. We'll talk more, but the evening is late and our guests are still waiting. Don't keep them waiting too long." James and Elena stood, offering polite goodbyes before stepping out of the library. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. "That was intense," she whispered. James placed a hand on her lower back again, guiding her gently away. "You handled it well. I'm sorry if he made you uncomfortable." She managed a small smile. "It's fine. I expected as much." They returned to the main hall, pretending to be a happy couple among the remaining guests. After another hour, the event wound down. James suggested they stay the night in the estate's guest wing, to which Elena reluctantly agreed. It would look more believable, and the drive back to the city was long. He escorted her upstairs, to a large suite with antique furniture and a soft king-sized bed adorned with embroidered pillows. She took in the opulence with mild awe. James lingered near the doorway. "You can have this room to yourself," he said. "I'll stay in my old bedroom down the hall." She appreciated his respect for her space. "Thank you," she murmured. He started to turn away, then paused. "Elena, thanks for doing this. You were amazing tonight. My father was definitely less suspicious than I feared." She gave him a tired smile. "I'm glad." They said good night, and he left. She changed into a nightgown, carefully placing the black gown in a garment bag. As she settled under the soft blankets, she felt a strange mix of relief and unease. She was lying in a grand estate, playing the role of a billionaire's wife. It was not her world, and yet she was somehow part of it now. She tossed and turned, her mind returning to the gentle way James had guided her through the crowd, the comfort of his voice, and the look of quiet admiration she sometimes caught in his gaze. The following weeks were a blur of similar events. James would invite Elena to functions, dinners, charity galas, networking parties, and each time, She would dress in attire he provided and play the supportive wife. They developed a subtle routine of talking points, stories of how they fell in love, all carefully built to convince those watching. In between these gatherings, Elena continued her usual life. She went to her office, handled insurance claims, and hung out with Lila. But now she had a secret double life where she was part of the Bradford family circle. It was draining, but she could not deny a growing closeness to James. He was attentive, kind, and surprisingly easy to talk to once they were alone. One evening, after a charity banquet, he dropped her off at her apartment. Before she got out of the car, he took her hand. "Elena, I know we said this was for show, but I want to thank you again. You've been incredible. My father is starting to trust me more, and it's because of you." She felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad to help," she said. He looked at her for a moment, as if weighing something in his mind. Then he leaned in slightly. She felt her breath catch. Their eyes locked, and for a second, she thought he might kiss her. But he hesitated and pulled back. "Good night," he murmured softly. She climbed out, her heart pounding. That night, she hardly slept, replaying the moment in her head. Did she want him to kiss her? Yes, a part of her did. But it was confusing. They had started this charade to fix a mistake, to keep his father happy, to wait for an annulment that was now on hold. Were they actually building something real, or were they just lonely people clinging to the closest warmth they could find? Days turned into weeks. One afternoon, the attorney emailed them both an update. The annulment was still pending, but no further action was required unless they wanted to finalize it. James forwarded the email to Elena with a note. "Let's keep it on hold if that's okay. For now." She agreed, though her heart fluttered with mixed feelings. Then came the day everything changed. James had to travel overseas for a business deal. He asked Elena to accompany him. She was hesitant at first. Leaving her job for a week was a big deal, but he offered to compensate her salary so she wouldn't lose money. Her boss, seeing how rarely Elena took vacations, allowed it. So Elena found herself boarding a private jet with James, bound for a glittering city on the other side of the world. The flight was luxurious, with plush seats and gourmet meals. She had never experienced anything like it. James tried to make her comfortable, joking lightly about their rich people's airplane food, which was better than any airline meal she had ever tasted. They landed in a foreign city with breathtaking skylines. There, James had meetings in a towering office complex. Elena spent her days exploring the city's museums, parks, and markets while James worked. In the evenings, they dined together. On the third night, James returned from his meetings looking exhausted. He loosened his tie, slumping onto the couch in their suite. Elena poured him a glass of water. "Hard day?" she asked gently. He let out a tired laugh. "Hard doesn't begin to cover it. My business partner is giving me a headache." She sat beside him. "Want to talk about it?" He took a sip of water, then turned to her with a soft smile. "You know, you're the first person who's asked me that in a long time. Everyone else just expects results from me." Her chest tightened with sympathy. "That's a lot of pressure." He nodded, gazing at the city lights outside their window. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing all this for myself or for my father's approval." She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Maybe a bit of both. But you can set your own path, James. You're smart and capable. You don't need to prove anything." He sighed, leaning back. "Thank you, Elena." She smiled, and for a long moment they just sat there in the comfortable silence. Outside, the city glittered like an endless sea of lights. Then he turned to her, a serious expression on his face. "Can I tell you something?" She nodded, feeling her heart rate spike at the intensity in his eyes. He took a deep breath. "I know we started this whole thing as a mistake, then turned it into an arrangement. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling something real. When I see you standing by me at events, I feel proud and happy. When we talk, I feel understood. I don't want to pretend anymore. I think I'm falling for you." Elena's breath caught in her throat. She stared at him, speechless for a moment. Her mind spun. Was this just another layer of the charade, or was he sincere? But looking into his eyes, she saw no deception. She recalled the times he had comforted her, the gentle reassurance he always offered, the quiet humor they shared. Her own feelings had been growing too, despite her attempts to ignore them. I feel the same, she admitted quietly, her voice trembling. I've been trying to deny it, but I can't. I'm scared, James. What if we're just caught up in this whirlwind? What if it all falls apart? He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. We can't know the future, but I'd rather take the chance than live with regrets. You're already my wife in a crazy, accidental way. But now, I want to be a real husband to you, if you'll let me. Tears pricked her eyes. She felt a rush of gratitude and fear all at once. James, she whispered, trying to form the right words. But in the end, she did not need words. She leaned forward, and their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss that turned warm and lingering. She felt her heart pound with a mixture of relief and excitement. They pulled apart, both breathing unevenly. James pressed his forehead against hers. Elena, I want us to give this an honest try. No more half-truths or hidden agendas. Let's see if we can build a marriage that means something. She smiled through happy tears, nodding. Yes, let's try. Their business trip took on a new light after that moment. By day, James attended meetings, but in the evenings, he returned to her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished. They explored the city hand in hand, discovering hidden restaurants and strolling through bustling night markets. They laughed together, talked about their pasts, and dreamed about what might lie ahead. When they returned home, they decided to keep the annulment on hold indefinitely. Instead, they moved into a penthouse apartment that James owned, deciding to truly live as husband and wife. At first, it was awkward merging their routines. Elena insisted on continuing her job. James respected that, offering her a position in his company if she ever changed her mind. She politely declined, not wanting to muddy the waters. She preferred to keep her identity. James's father was surprised by their new commitment, but over time, he accepted that their marriage was more genuine than he had believed. At one family dinner, he pulled Elena aside and quietly thanked her for supporting his son. She saw a glimmer of pride in his eyes, realizing that underneath his stern demeanor, he did care for James's happiness. Of course, there were challenges. They argued sometimes about his grueling schedule, about her reluctance to dive into high society. But each time, they worked through it, learning more about each other's fears and hopes. They practiced true communication, pushing past the initial layer of formality that had defined their arrangement. As the months passed, their bond deepened. They took a belated honeymoon trip, not to a cliché tropical resort, but to a quiet cabin near a lake, where they could roast marshmallows by a fire and share their dreams under a star-filled sky. There, Elena asked James if he regretted their drunken marriage. He laughed, pulling her into a warm embrace, saying he would not change a thing. When they returned, they decided to host a small ceremony. Just close friends, Lila, and a few family members. They wanted to exchange vows while fully sober, fully aware, and fully in love. Elena wore a simple white dress, and James wore a neat suit. This time, no loud chapels or city neon lights. Just a garden, sunlight filtering through the leaves, and the promise they made to each other. I choose you, Elena said, slipping a new ring onto his finger. Not by accident, but by choice. I promise to stand by you, love you, and respect you for who you are. James's eyes shone with tears as he repeated his own vows, sealing them with a gentle kiss. Lila cheered, and Mr. Bradford gave a nod of approval. Even the dog at Elena's old apartment, who was carried in by Lila for the fun, barked in celebration. Later, as they walked down the garden path, hand in hand, Elena paused. She looked up at James, remembering the shock of that first morning when she had woken up beside a stranger with a pounding headache, only to find she was married. She recalled the fear, the confusion, the determination to fix it. She thought of the photo from that crazy night, showing her laughing with absolute joy. And now she felt that same joy tenfold, but in a calm and steady way. This time, there was no blur of alcohol or rush of impulse. She was certain she loved him, and he loved her back. "You know," she said softly, "this is the happiest accident of my life." James smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. "Mine too, Elena. Mine too." They continued down the path together, the sun warming their faces, stepping forward into a future they had chosen, ready for whatever came next, together.